Hey guys, it's David from Red Wagon Dioramas. I'm going to give you a little rundown on my canyon diorama here with the Tusken Raiders and Luke and R2 hiding out there. This is the second display piece I ever built right after Jabba's palace here. So I think I did it maybe about 3 years ago or so. Being my second piece, I was still very new at the hobby and at crafting and everything, so it took me quite a while actually to get the painting done the way I liked it. But I'll give you a rundown basically how I built it, and overall it's not a difficult thing to do. So hopefully you find some inspiration in this video. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or you want any more information or tips or anything. So like most of my dioramas, the inspiration starts with the figures. I wanted a cool way to display these Tusken Raiders, and it's kind of an iconic scene for me, you know, with R2 hiding out in the little cave there while Luke obviously gets ambushed, and then Obi-Wan comes and rescues him. And I had a little bit of height on my shelf, so I thought, hey, it'd be cool to build something with some multiple levels to it, so I could have, you know, the figures. I basically can fit more. You can fit more figures in a space if you use different elevations, obviously, to create some height in your display. I should note that I didn't take a lot of photos, and I have no video of me actually building this thing. I have a handful of photos, which I'll share here in the video. But at the time, I was brand new into the hobby, and I wasn't really thinking too much about, you know, documenting my work. I'll share with you what I have, and you'll get the idea how it came together. So the foam base here, this is just pink foam. Get different thicknesses. This is like looks like a 2-inch piece, maybe 2.5 inch. I got some 1.5 inch layers here. It's all pink foam that I basically, you know, cut to shape roughly with a knife and then kind of stacked it together loosely, get the idea of how I wanted things to fit. Put the figures on there, made sure that they were going to fit on my shelf, you know, the height wise. And I started carving the edges of the foam with a hot wire cutter. I think I got on Amazon for like 30 bucks, but those tools are great. Anybody who's doing dioramas, you should get one of those. It's a great tool for starting out. The hot wire cutter lets you do, you know, all these little ins and outs and grooves along the edge of the foam, kind of to create that, I don't know, the lines and the striations of the rock, like all these little foam pieces of rock. That's just with the hot wire cutter going, you know, going in and out, making all those grooves. You know, I use the hot wire cutter, you know, at different angles. You know, it depends on how you draw it through the foam. You get little grooves like this, or, you know, I undercut the edge here to give a little more headroom to R2. You know, all these chunks. You can see the layers down here, the base layer. I kind of laid these two pieces of foam loose in my hand, holding them, and then ran the cutter along them. So you got the similar ins and outs, so they don't perfectly line up. I just thought that looked good, you know, trying to get the look of multiple layers of rock there. And this foam, the type of foam here is an XPS, which is extruded polystyrene. It's the type of foam you can get at any home improvement store like Home Depot or Lowe's in the States. And like I said, this, I think, 1.5 inch thickness, layered up 3 or 4 layers of that. And then I had a larger piece here, a wider piece that I used kind of to bookend the display as I, you know, bumped it up against the Jabba setup here. So after I had the foam pieces cut to shape and set, you know, loose set in place, I just needed to glue them together. I'm pretty sure I just used white PVA glue for this diorama. The white glue, you know, like school glue, is really easy to use, obviously. It does take a while to set up. I found that it took like a full 24 hours before this was really stuck together well. And I think I may have clamped it together or weighted it down with books or something just to hold it in place. But I left it overnight. There's faster ways of gluing foam. You know, using caulking works good, or even super glue, or I've used hot glue once, but the hot glue can melt the foam, so you gotta be careful with that with the temperature. Depends on the type of foam. The next step I took in texturing was, I have a small little rock, I don't know, maybe 1.5 inch big or so, and it's real jagged, and it's just a rough piece of rock that I found outside. And I use that and I roll it into the surface of the foam, and that's what creates, you know, these finer grooves and markings here, and the indentations and the cracks. That's just pushing that rock into the foam and rolling it around. You know, some of these lines here, some of the surface indentations. It gives a little bit more texture to the foam after you do the wire cutter, so I recommend trying that too. I think I've seen people do it with like a ball of tinfoil too. You'll get some indentations and markings on the surface of the foam which make it look more natural. You can see like these rocks here, some of these, you know, I could have done a better job now. I mean, these are just kind of weird shapes and offcuts I had of the foam. Like this one looks pretty good. I think that has some nice texture to it, and the paint came out nice. So after the foam was all glued together, I believe I used a little bit of painter's putty just to fill in some of the edges, you know, the gaps between the layers. So just kind of thumb that in there and smooth it around. And you could do that with probably with clay or caulking. Again, I think I used like a fast drying spackle or something from the home improvement store. So once it was all glued together, I started painting it. And painting it took me, I think I spent like 2 days painting. I must have done like 20 coats. But I started with a real dark base color, dark brown with, you know, mostly black even with brown mixed in there. And then that was super dark, so I started lightening it up. I did some browns and then added some reds and some whites and some yellows. And ultimately I was working off this background photo I have here in my display. I found this picture. This is just taken at Death Valley. It was somewhere in Google. It was a clean background shot that I wanted to use behind the diorama, so I used it as basically a palette to match my colors to. So a lot of trial and error and multiple layers and multiple coats and multiple washes of paint to really kind of get the brownish tan and orange colors that were similar to the background image. And overall it came out really well, I think. I do remember that at one point I had layered on, you know, I lightened and lightened and lightened almost to a white where the foam looked, it just almost looked white and was like way too bright. And so I then started using brown and red washes, and I would just, you know, watery brush and just let that cascade down the foam and brushed into all the nooks and crannies. And I think it was the washes afterwards that added the reds and the oranges and the darker browns. So overall, you know, I don't know that I did it in took the best approach because I wasn't that experienced, but the ultimate end result was good. I also at one point used a cut up kitchen sponge to kind of dab on the paint in different areas, trying sponge painting. I don't know, I guess it gave kind of a mottled look to it, but ultimately I think that got covered up by the other layers and the washes. So that's basically it. You know, cut it out of foam, use a hot wire cutter to shape all the edges, add some extra texture by rolling a rock around on the surfaces or tinfoil. You know, add some spackle or putty to fill in the gaps and the cracks, and then paint it with a bunch of layers of paint, just using acrylic paints and washes. But overall, not a difficult project, guys. I encourage you guys to try things like this. It sure adds a lot to your display. It's fun. It's gets your creative juices going, and looks really great. So thanks for watching, guys. If there's anything I can do to help you out, let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button for me. If you're new, please subscribe. And thank you for all the support. You can check me out on Facebook and Instagram as well. And thanks for watching, and may the force be with you. Bye.